Hi, Jayanth. Good to see you back again. How was your
Les
weekend? The usual
Leslie,
question.
good to see you. This weekend was good. It was filled with adrenaline rush. Me and my daughter, we went to India Supercross league, the racing league. It's the world's first franchisee-based, dirt bike racing league.
Yeah,
So
I know I was supposed to be there.
yeah, you were supposed to be there. You missed it. Trust me.
Yeah, I know. My bad. I just wanted to be there very badly, but I had some other commitments. But yeah, so be it. And viewers and listeners, we have with us today Carin Isabel Knoop. I hope I have pronounced your name right, Carin.
Perfectly. Hello, everyone.
So, since Women's Day is around the corner, it's serendipity that we have Karen with us. So, she's the executive director at Harvard Business School, but is with us today in a personal capacity. She's passionate about improving lives at work. So, by now, you might have guessed that the topic that we're going to speak broadly on is how the future of work and the workplace is being defined by AI and generative AI. Now, Karen describes herself as a pragmatic optimist, devoted to helping those who care for others. So, welcome to this podcast, Karen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And in case your audience is wondering, I spent the weekend sorting my sock drawer, but we can't all have exciting lives.
I know. And speaking
It's
about
pretty exciting, though.
absolutely, and speaking about excitements and how the weekend goes, there's so much happening in the field of AI and generative
Yes.
AI. Like I think my just to wrap it up a little for viewers and listeners, so Google fumbled at this, this whole attempt to become woke. So it's kind of woke algorithms misfired. Then you had Sora that made waves with
Yeah.
all, dolphins flying on bicycles and that video editor creating a lot of, it was a whole jamboree out there. So it was good fun. Then, of course, interestingly, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, the CEO and founder of NVIDIA, made a very I think that comment was coming saying that, we no longer need, there won't be a need for programmers any longer because English
Yeah.
is going to be the programming language.
Programming language.
Yeah.
We discussed this in one of our first 5 episodes on this podcast.
Yeah, the only thing that
Leslie.
kept me thinking was that India is a land of Indian languages, so
Yes.
we really don't speak English out here. So what happens to all of them if they can't program in English? So again, it sets you at a disadvantage. But of course, that's another topic that we can think about. And then a very interesting study by CopyLeaks, which says that 60% of GPT 3.5 output has some sort of plagiarism or the other. So, these were things that I, sort of managed to cobble up during the week. Jayanth, Karen, what did you all, gather from the internet and from all the stuff that you'll keep on reading?
For me, since our last episode, it was Sora's launch, which was the big wave. 1 full minute videos and with the kind of quality that they put out. Although it was closed, it's not yet available for public. That I think was the big news. And the Gemini, Google taking back, rolling back Gemini launch, okay, and talking about launching it again. That I think is the second big news for me, and Microsoft's partnership with Mistral and India's own Ola's launch of Krutrim, which again was a little bit all over the place in terms of accuracy. For me, these were the top four key takeaways, and most importantly, Nvidia hitting the $2 trillion market cap. That's a big milestone. Okay.
Yeah, but this on Google Gemini, Jayanth, I think it's basically only the image generator part of
Only
it.
the image generator
Yeah,
part,
because
yes.
that image generator is based on a model called Image Gen 2. So I think it's just restricted to that. So I think they pulled off the model temporarily.
Temporarily.
They say now that they will reintroduce it after the all the stuff has been ironed out.
In a few weeks, yes.
Yeah, but yes, and Krutrim has launched the beta version. Karen, if you're not familiar with Krutrim, which I don't doubt you will be, it's an Indian. So in India, what we are doing is we are developing a lot of local language models. So not necessarily a local large language model. It could be a small or it could be a medium-sized language model, but it's a language model that is being trained on Indian languages,
Indian
Indian
languages.
dialects.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Krupin is one of those companies which is, the founder is, it is the unit of Ola Cabs and Ola Electric, if you have heard these electric vehicle makers. So they are making this
Ola
thing.
is India's Uber, by the way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be a nice way of describing, but I don't think Bhavesh Agarwal would like that analogy, but all the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
Krupin was in its beta. He released the beta launch, but it misfired. A lot of hallucination,
Yeah,
etc. That is typical of most LLMs in their initial stage.
especially in the initial stages, yes.
So I
Yeah.
guess if
But
the only saving grace was that if Gemini can goof up and fumble, I think the
Yeah.
small LLMs will also be. Karen, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on all these, releases that happen every second day, where you find like a kid getting off a cradle and then trying to walk and fall and stumble.
Now
What?
trying to drive a Formula One car out of a cradle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, part of me loves it because I like change. I also really like the access that it provides in a way. When you think about making English the programming language, I like technologies that fundamentally sort of change the rules of the game. And we'll talk about this a little bit when we talk about matching. But this tension between how do you promote access and how do you level the playing field without leveling the playing field. And so if we all do wind up listening to the same music, thinking the same way, speaking the same language, what gets lost and how can technology maintain what is sort of uniquely local? In the US, there was a big topic this week around news deserts. There are places in the US where you don't have local news. And so, it's important for people to understand how civic decisions get made at the local level so that they can be educated citizens to make decisions at a more sort of state and national level. My interpretation of the news is, of course, biased from my vantage point. I work for a content producer. So the issues around plagiarism in ChatGPT is very significant. And for us, when we use something that is sourced to ChatGPT, it cannot be protected by copyright.
Right.
So, the universities and all the scholarly institutions really are at this tension of, expanding access and accelerating things, but still having to play within the rules of the institution. And maybe we'll meet again in 10 years or even in 5 years and realize that copyright laws shouldn't exist. And there's certainly people who are advocating.
The copyright law is being challenged by OpenAI. So I think just today, I think that OpenAI is once again says that, NYT has not it has picked holes in the arguments of NYT. So of course, that case is still sub judice. So we'll have to wait till the courts decide either way. But interesting that you spoke about plagiarism because as I said, that CopyLeaks report, 60% of, GPT 3.5 produced content has some form of plagiarism. The thought that came to mind was that many LLMs are being trained on GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. So obviously they would, it's like has a cascading effect. These plagiarism genes will be, adopted by them, and then you'll have plagiarized content being trained on plagiarized content. It's a nightmare.
No, and in that context, one key milestone or a development this week again was Reddit's
Yes.
partnership with Google for $60 million, providing all its content for Google's foundational model training, right? And this could be sort of setting precedent for content companies to to find this as a new revenue stream. And Carin, you work for a content provider. How is this being viewed, from that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the university has a set of rules to adhere to, but has always been sort of interested in the future. There was the creation of edX, and so I think there too, it's a question of how do you monetize your content, and wherever there's money, there's going to be lawsuits. It's just the nature of how things get adjudicated in business, and a lot of things around Gen AI, at least the popularization of it was, oh, this is going to be great and this is going to be wonderful. But that within 5 milliseconds, lawsuits are going to emerge. So at the end of the day, the courts will have to decide, what makes sense. One thing that I find interesting about technology is that we always hold it up to unbelievably high standards, right? So you see this with autonomous vehicles. When they have an accident, it's the end of the day. When 400 of us kill people driving drunk, it doesn't even make the news anymore. And with plagiarism, there's a little bit of that, right? So there's only that many ways that I can say, India is a large nation. So if I put that in an anti-plagiarism software, it's going to pick up that thread of 3 or 4 words because it's going to be in a million other sources. Yeah. Whereas if I engage in active plagiarism of someone else's sources, knowing that it is theirs, and that's a form of theft. Theft involves emotions, it involves intent. The machine is making a mistake. So I weigh these slightly differently. I'm not sure if that's appropriate. I'm not sure if that would hold up in court. But that to me is the interesting part of these machines and this acceleration.
On a lighter vein, probably, you have an AI algorithm fighting these cases, acting like a paralegal, and probably you'll have,
right.
Yeah. So we're going to have AI.
And they're making up sources, like, in the US, this poor lawyer consultant, so anyway, but it's the beginning of every technology. There's going to be sort of teething pains, and they're fascinating to watch.
Right. And not to put you on the spot, but instinctively, what does your instinct say, Carin? With this technology coming in and crossing so many lines from a legal jurisdiction point of view and legalities point of view, do you see a whole lot of changes coming on the law and the regulatory and the policies and the legal side of things, opening up to accommodate what the technology is now capable of doing and is already doing?
So I was nodding my head yes until the word accommodate. I think, you're going to see, like with GDPR, what regulators do is that they wait too long and then they tend to clamp down. And, one hope here is that this has come so fast and so massively.
Exactly.
That at least there have been discussions at the high regulatory level. Now, when you watch the congressional reporting, when you did watch the TikTok CEO, that was a painful interview, and it was just as painful or cross-examination, just as painful as when, suddenly US senators realized that Facebook was selling our data to ad providers. It came as a complete surprise to the regulators who are supposed to be regulating, the context. So I think for sure we're going to see changes in the law. We have to, the railroads came along. We had to change property rights and access rights and egress rights. And we'll see the same. So I just hope that it's not a winner take all kind of operation, which is where it seems to be headed. And we were all old enough to be here at the beginning of the internet, and it was supposed to be, it will be free, it will be this and that. And then here immediately everything has been compressed, and all at once you're already in the winner take all robber baron kind of era. And that cannot feel good to me as
also what perhaps scary is the incredible pace at which these technologies are moving and evolving every second day. So you have a task on hand. Everybody has their work cut out. But coming to the topic that is close to your heart, when we talk about the future of work or how these technologies are affecting the workplace, I know that you have done a lot of research. So Jayanth and I were talking about the kind of research that you have done. So probably you could tell our viewers and listeners, how you connect the dots in the workplace and what would be the likely impact that you are seeing at this point in time.
Yeah. So, one of the fundamental aspects of work is matching, which is, we have to be matched to the right job. And hopefully the manager will be able to match her style to sort of what it is that we need. And one of the things that I'm looking at the moment is what have we learned from platforms that actually do a lot of matching services for us. So if you think of, Uber, even Facebook is sort of matching us with friends, matching us with dopamine, whatever we need. These platforms have been doing pretty well. But when we're using technology to match people at work, so for example, the use of AI or even Gen AI in recruiting, all of the HR tech and the predictive analytics, on the one hand, on our, hard side, the dating apps, they've been successful on some measures, but on other measures, they really have failed. And it's a real puzzle to me because we should actually all be happily paired up now. And we should all have perfect jobs if the technology were really able to match us. But in these very, very large environments where there's so much demand on both sides, there are real mismatch issues. I think, post-COVID, there's been a lot of interest in worker well-being and mental health. It's been a problem. People haven't been engaged since 2006 when Gallup first started. COVID comes along, there's a big freak out. We do all kinds of things, but I think essentially it's a matching problem. So that's where I've been spending my time.
Interesting. I mean, that you spoke about, how matching and all these algorithms, basically, whether it's Facebook, whether it is Tinder, whether it is, Uber, and even for the porn industry, for that matter of fact, a lot has been picked up right from the internet. I mean, those learnings from those industries, especially the payments industry, for that matter of fact, had learned a lot from the porn industry. And so the learnings have been really steep on those levels. But speaking about the workplace and speaking about how, the promise of these algorithms when they started out was more about, creating a kind of some kind of an equilibrium, some kind of, objectivity.
Level playing field. Level playing field.
But that doesn't seem to have happened, because you're right from the point of view of when you're sending your resume, you have to have a host of keywords. If those people who are not aware of that will probably not even see the resume go beyond the first level. So you must have done a lot of work in that area also. So probably you could, highlight some of the kind of, workarounds.
Yeah. So, my colleagues at HBS, there's a future of work initiative. So they've done some work there, which I can then share with your readers. But this notion of how do you make sure that the people get seen that you want to be seen. So in one theory, the larger the sample, the better your output should be. And the machines are giving you actually the ability to screen for the perfect candidate. In order for that to occur, several things need to occur sort of upbound, which is that employers need to think a little harder about what they actually need in the job and how they're going to communicate. So you read most job descriptions, they really read like dating profiles. We want you to be have good technical skills, have great conversation skills, great interpersonal skills. You may not be needing them at all at work. We want you to be a good team player, even when you're an individual contributor. I mean, I even look at our job descriptions. You're looking for like this perfect, the husband who's going to be nice and pick up the kids and make the money and look like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we're writing job descriptions that are unrealistic. Then we're using jargon that is incomprehensible to most human beings. Often we're playing games as employers because we're putting salary ranges that are too low, from like 90 to 250,000. We advertise the jobs as remote. And then you click on it and it's remote, every fifth Tuesday. So already you're sending out confusion into the market when you're trying to match, and you're sort of building distrust. So if you think of this as a dating site, I look at your thing and I said, I know you're lying. I don't know what you're lying about. I know that you're soliciting 1 million jobs because it's now easy for you to do by technology. So I, as candidate, I'm going to play the same sort of game that I'm playing, which is the same thing you're seeing with dating sites, which is I'm going to pretend to be exactly what you want me to be, which is if I'm clever, I'm going to take your job description and cut and paste it, and maybe I'll make it transparent so that the bots put it out, but it's not visible to you. I'm going to carpet bomb the internet with applications because it's easy to do. Right now, I can just generate whatever. I'm going to use ChatGPT to make me sound like, a fantastically eloquent person, and then I'm going to wait.
Adding filters to your Tinder pictures.
Exactly right. So then you wind up with these perfect cover letters. Then you have the people on Zoom, and you're like, "So tell me a little bit about yourself," and they're like, which is okay. I understand we're neurodivergent. Some people have a hard time speaking in public. I'm one of them. I dislike it greatly, but I sound like what I write. But that's downstream, right? Yeah, that's once you've sort of cleared it. But in this future of work through the HR tech model, you now have flooding on both sides.
Right.
And you're asking algorithms to sort of find the perfect match. And I think they're going to match on attributes. But it's going to be very difficult for the machines to figure out how you match on behaviors. Because basically, I can read someone's strange cover letter and say, oh, this person has an odd personality. I think they might fit in well to my team. But that odd person will have written a standard resume and CV now because they will have never made it. So now I read a resume and they're all boring. So I randomly pick one of the boring people out of the lot and hope that they will not be. So I think there's something occurring here that is causing a lot of distrust in the people applying for jobs.
Yeah.
And then downstream, the ability of technology is causing people to have all kinds of emotional affairs. So, right, let's say I have a bad day with you, Leslie. You don't want to support my pet project. At night, I go on LinkedIn and I said, I could go work for Deepti. She looks like she's nice. Let me just ping her or let me apply to a job. It will make me feel better. I'll get the dopamine that I get when somebody likes me on a dating site. I'm not making the effort to go to you to see Leslie, in order for me to grow here. I need you to support me. Can we talk about this, right? So I'm not practicing these key sort of adult conversation skills. What happens is I ghost you. I kind of exit our relationship. You ghost me. Right. You're like, she's a Gen Z. She's hopeless. She's entitled. She'll be gone in a year anyway. And in a year, I'll be gone. And so to me, it's a fascinating puzzle because on both of these markets, we should be able to do better. And you two are technical and technological mental giants. And so, you guys need to figure this out for us because it's not easy as a recruiter or somebody who studies the workplace at the moment. And we haven't even talked about bias.
And the answer seems to lie more in human behavior and sociology and anthropology than in technology. Technology can only, take it and manifest it. But the answers seem to lie there. So what you're essentially explaining is you're drawing parallel between the current dating scenario amongst the populace and their work relationships as well. So things like breadcrumbing, ghosting, all of these, from the personal relationships are carrying over, into the work relationships as well.
No, I wanted to say that a few minutes back, Leslie mentioned the importance of porn in fueling the commercial sort of personal side of the internet. And when you look at how that evolved, you've got sort of Danny's hard drive in the mid 90s. Actually, the computerized matching started in the 60s, actually by a woman called John Ball in the UK. So she was actually the first one to sort of think about matching people through a computer. And then there was an effort at Harvard. Match.com comes in the 90s. So these sites were actually around sort of potentially conditioning us before we started to apply sort of on online. So it might have habituated speech, it might have habituated behavior. It's difficult to know what comes first, but we are seeing these similar behaviors. The ghosting, certainly, employers are not getting back to candidates, or they're not getting back to them after an interview. The employees are not showing up, but both parties are guilty. So.
Yeah. But, I think also part of the reason is that the expectations today, basically the sense that I get to is that from an HR perspective, these relationships need to be rethought, from point of view, with the intervention of AI and Gen AI, because we are dealing with absolutely 4 generations in the workplace.
Five, actually.
Yeah, 5. So now, you have added one more to that. So if you're dealing with 5 generations, you're dealing with 5 kind of mindsets. And this whole thing of, the workplace being your family and all will hardly cut ice with any of the younger folks, because it doesn't work that day. Because you see most of the big tech companies, for instance, they keep on sacking people every second day. It's hard for anybody to believe that, a family will deal with people. However much you talk about your HR policy will say something, your in reality, you will be saying another thing. So there's a lot of disconsonance in what you are saying. And so I feel all these, even the HR folks need to just look at, it's just not a work of algorithm. That Jayanth also said, even you pointed out, it's a mixture of understanding psychology, sociology, and basic sense added to that.
HR folks have to see how in today's day and age, how are relationships standing, and need to ape that into work relationships, or setting HR policies and then using technology to scale them, right? In today's day and age with Tinder and Bumble and Match.com and everything happening, how are long-term, long-standing relationships still carrying on, and what are the key attributes for that? I mean, if you're saying that ghosting, breadcrumbing, presenteeism, all these characteristics are common in the personal dating or personal relationship realm, and they are carrying on to the professional workplace realm, including presenteeism, doing the bare minimum to to just make your presence felt and earn your salary, right?
And
That
also,
is also
if we are okay as software as a service, why aren't we okay with, work as a service? I mean, I offer my professional services, come take, because most of the thing is working like a gig worker. You find a tenure of a professional in today's time and age. I don't think, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see it more than, 2 years or 3 years at most at any level, even at the junior levels. And for no fault of your own, either the company is not doing well, the company folds up, or at senior levels you have not delivered enough value to your shareholders. So the CEO's tenure, unless you're the Jensen Huang or Satya Nadella, these are kind of outliers, but most of the other CEOs would hardly last in today's times. And even at the mid level and the other levels, you suddenly find entire jobs becoming obsolete because of AI and generative AI. They have to be reskilled or upskilled. So I think it's clearly the responsibility also of the HR to rethink this, and the whole C-suite executive, just not the HR.
Oh yeah, but to go back to Jayanth's point around, what are the behavior, how, if we don't match on attributes, and if we want behaviors of people who are willing to come for a few years and work really hard and then go on and go somewhere else, and maybe, polygamy and, marriage for life is not the way that we should be organize ourselves. And maybe it's multiple, right, dedicated monogamous relationships at work or at home or whatever. So I'm not attached to an idealized past. But I think something needs to be reset on expectations management. It's actually interesting that we wind up here because in 1995, a book came out. So that's when Match.com came out. And I forgot the actual title, but I think it was called The Rules, Age-Old Secrets to Marrying Mr. Right. And so it was never call him back, play hard to get, don't pee in front of him, and all of that stuff. And a recent book that I saw a young woman read is called, oh gosh, and I forgot the beginning of the title, but Marry Him. Sometimes it's good to settle for Mr. Wrong, or so, it's not the exact title. But so in 30 years, if we take these books sort of as bookends, I actually think that sometimes settling for Mr. Good Enough, not Mr. Wrong, Mr. Good Enough.
Yeah, Mr. Good Enough.
And I think that partly technology has given us these expectations of perfection. And it's really difficult because then we do wind up disappointed. And I think the other sort of thing that technology has done is to seem that everything is easy. And finding a job that matches us, if we have the luxury of being able to sort of even consider that, most of us need a job just to sustain ourselves.
Right.
But if you're looking for a job that is really sort of wants to be a good match, you have to think really hard. Who are you? What do you want? What can I realistically get? Will I be honest so that the interviewer is honest back? And then the interviewer has to do that same job. And we're living in a world of expediency, and that takes time. And so I think it's a really interesting and fascinating. It's a real puzzle at the moment. I mean, the puzzle around open talent is also a great one. I don't understand why we don't have a $50 billion company in the open talent environment. So you have millions of small platforms that are very duplicative. And the corporates are like, why should I hire Carin as a freelancer? Her hourly rate is already factoring in the hours that she's not working. And then the freelancers on the side are realizing that it's actually also really hard to be a freelancer for the same matching issues that we have just been talking about. And it's a lonely life. It's a life of rejection and all of that. So I think bringing into the technology more basic understanding about feelings of inferiority and human behaviors is kind of the next step. I think Bumble did this, as a dating site in the US where the women write. So we're coming up on Women's Day, it's a form of women empowering, but it's also a lot easier on men. And there are more men on that platform because they're not getting rejected. They're getting chosen.
Right.
So on most platforms, you get, as a man, you're 60 to 40. If you're not super handsome, super wealthy, and are not holding a fish, you basically get no one clicking on you. And then you get more and more angry. So Bumble flipped the script. I think that's quite interesting to look at. And maybe in recruiting, there are companies that could think of having people apply saying, what am I uniquely good at? And do you happen to have a job that matches it?
No, I just was wondering whether a platform like Upwork, wasn't it supposed to do something like that?
Yeah.
Like those kind of platforms, you're supposed to do that.
So here's very interesting, a piece of news I came across yesterday, literally. India, one of India's IT services company, Infosys, came up with a press release yesterday saying that almost 80% of its workforce, were moonlighting internally. By that, what they meant was, since COVID, when all the work went remote, especially the IT services, the software developers and the IT services employees here in India, they started taking gigs on the side, working for startups, building algorithms on the side, or working for 2-3 companies on the side, right? While having a primary employer. Okay. So this particular company, what it did was it sort of flowed back, on that trend, and it opened up a sort of a marketplace, for its employees to, not bid for, but to apply for other projects, that are there within that company. And yesterday, the news article said 80% of its employees actually applied for different projects on their internal marketplace. That got me thinking, if this catches critical mass, going forward, at least in the IT services space, this could be the norm, wherein the companies, the big companies like your Infosys, TCS, your IBM, your Accenture, your Capgemini, they'll say, come on board, join us for a bare minimum salary. But we are now the marketplace for projects. Okay. We are sort of the marketplace for, getting the projects from the clients and, matching your skill sets. You get on board for a bare minimum salary, but you have the opportunity to apply for different projects on our marketplace and make as much as you can. That way, converting employees into micro entrepreneurs, and at the same time reducing their own fixed costs of salaries. This could be the future if it takes off at scale.
Jayanth, that many startups in India, like InMobi and all, have created a lot of entrepreneurs within their companies.
Yes.
So this has been happening for quite some time. In fact, the whole IT services model itself is based on that, to where initially they used to talk about a lot of, offshoring and outsourcing. Then they started talking about being partners in business.
Correct.
So basically, what were you doing? You were simply bidding for projects. So now you're translating the very same idea down to your employees. Now
at the employee level, at the individual level.
Now the only issue out here is, how do you protect your employees if you want to? Can you expect loyalty, which goes back to what Carin said and what we were talking about? So I think it's a conundrum that I see. I don't know, Carin, what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know that loyal, I think it's productivity. We're making a deal that I will work for you and I will produce a certain level in exchange for you paying me a living wage and sort of taking care of me. And somehow that contract is being broken, right? So my having side gigs, and in the US it's the same, I think it's really a form of fraud. People sort of not working when they're supposed to work. And then the employees turn around and say, the management doesn't trust me. Well, of course they shouldn't trust you because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm not, loyalty is kind of here. I'm kind of like, can we just all agree that this is a contract and that we won't cheat on each other? And then, we'll leave it at that, and then do our very best. What I really like about the model that is being proposed is that one of the very challenging things about freelancing is that you do not have sort of a basic living wage. And this
Yes.
model of sort of a low living wage with the ability to make tips or gain something on the side is kind of the US, service model. And I think this is kind of an in between. It's a platform where people are vetted. You keep their talent inside. You retain them. So I like that. In India, also taking a look at UST. And things are challenging. I think also the corporates are not quite as willing to take risks as we think they are. So I think the ability for the corporates to try to keep talent inside. So of course, Google has been doing this since the beginning of time also, by having engineers sort of pursue something that they're passionate about. It's not always possible. So,
the 20%, this one, and they also have something called as Area 120, where all these 20% projects then turn into startups. So they have a little incubator there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah. More or less spoken about a host of topics today. I mean, covered the entire gamut. But I'm coming back to the whole thing of whether, algorithms have been good for the workplace or bad for the workplace. I don't think the jury is simply out. I think I won't even say that these are early days because, algorithms have been at work in the workplace for quite some time.
Yes.
So there should have been some... Yeah, sorry, Carin.
I mean, I think, of course, algorithms have been phenomenal for the work. I mean, look at the value that technology has created. I mean, we wouldn't be speaking if, algorithms didn't have value. We wouldn't have met on LinkedIn. I mean, of course, it's an unbelievable force for good. And I think I don't like the current narrative about it all being negative. It becomes negative, I think, if we do not understand the human psychology around it. And I think this is the point in this conversation, that humans since the beginning of time are hardwired for sort of 4 dimensions of insecurity. I may be physically insecure, I may be psychologically insecure, I may be really wanting to bond, and I may need a lot of admiration. Most of the platforms are built around these, and I think that if we think of the future of work, looking at people like objects to be matched is somehow reductive. And so the question is, how can you use technology to actually get at human behavior? I was thinking in dating apps, they match us, but then they could say, Leslie really sends a lot of audio voices. So maybe when you reach out to him, send him an audio memo, because clearly he's a voice kind of person. They don't even help me with that. Or maybe some expensive sites do. But so I feel that the HR function, now that they've automated a lot of stuff, they're strategic partners and they're so fundamentally important to the enterprise. And the more technology I think you deploy, the more important the HR function will be. So the area of HR tech, I think, has a lot of growth ahead. And we're also talking tomorrow is Leap Day. We're in a leap year, so we can leap into love, leap into different things. And International Women's Day. So the leap years, actually, there's an Irish tradition, which is that it was a time when women were allowed to go out and give marriage proposals. So I think this year we should encourage ourselves to think differently, turn platforms around and thought processes around, and keep the best of the old and go on forward.
Bumble up.
No, absolutely. I think HR tech requires a lot of reinvention because, most of the time you find that when you get their notes from HR, they're all about, having balloon parties and other kind of parties and, building camaraderie, which is all, I think, extremely important because human bonding and social bonding are extremely important things. But, I think these issues also probably need to be, looked at with with a magnifying glass and need to be acted upon. So I know we could have, talked about this topic till the cows come home, as they say. But
the topic of parties is interesting. So all this focus on downstream parties and mental health apps, it's too late. And I think we can use technology to sort of go way upstream and say, to which extent does technology sort of cause distrust even before I interview the person? Once the person comes on board, what kind of technology, what kind of onboarding, sort of screening can I do? Can I do something 3 months later? Technology can really help us just communicate outbound to the employee, and also sort of follow them, so that you don't need parties, so that you don't need mental health apps and all the stuff that we've now invested in downstream. But it was a phenomenal conversation. I really appreciate you all having me on, and you're in a wonderful spot of discovery. So it's been an honor. Thank you.
It's been our honor, Carin. Thanks for making this time early in the morning in Cambridge, Boston area. Okay.
All right. My pleasure.
See you next week.
All right. And hello to the audience. Good luck. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bye, Leslie.
Bye, Jayanth.